The first cold wind of October slid down Colfax Avenue and slipped into Harbor Grill every time the door opened. The little bell above the frame rang with each new gust, a bright sound against the murmur of voices and the low crackle from the TVs showing football. Daniel Cruz held the door for his daughter and felt that wind brush the back of his neck. Mia hopped past him, her sneakers squeaking on the tile as heat and the smell of sizzling meat wrapped around them. "It smells like cheese heaven," she said, tipping her head back to sniff. "That is a very specific kind of heaven," Daniel replied. "Find us a table before you pass out." Harbor Grill was not fancy. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, ketchup bottles, half full, neon beer signs reflected in the front windows. The kind of place that always had someone at the counter at any hour, and never played music so loud you had to shout. Mia chose a booth near the big front window where you could see the streetlights flick on, one by one outside. She slid into the seat, dropped her backpack beside her, and pressed both hands on the table as if claiming it. "I am ordering the grilled cheese," she announced, "and tomato soup and fries." "You have the appetite of 3 people, Daniel said, but he smiled. "Grilled cheese and soup it is." He shrugged off his coat and folded it beside him. The waitress poured them water without asking and left menus with a practiced flick of her wrist. Mia did not bother to open hers. She already knew what she wanted, had probably been thinking about it since the afternoon. Outside beyond the glass, the sky deepened to a purple blue. Cars glided by, their headlights sliding along the window like streaks of pale light. Daniel watched them for a second, just breathing in the warmth, the clatter, the easy noise of a place where people were not thinking about survival. For a long time, he had avoided restaurants. They reminded him too much of nights when he could not afford even the cheapest item on a menu, when windows were hard edges between him and people who could sit inside and order without counting. The bell above the door chimed again. He did not mean to look up. His eyes just moved that way, muscle memory. A tall woman in a thrift store coat had stepped in, tugging the door closed behind a small girl with a backpack almost as big as her. The girl stopped short, blinking in the warm light. Her hair was a messy tangle, cropped short and curling at the ends. The knees of her jeans were scuffed white. She sniffed the air the way Mia had, but her expression was different. Less joy, more hunger. "Table for 2, the host asked. "Just a minute," the woman said. She stepped aside to study the big board above the counter that listed the daily specials. Her hand went instinctively to her pocket fingers, pressing against something there. Money. Not much from the way her fingertips moved, smoothing and counting through the fabric. Daniel knew that motion. Years had not dulled it. Thumb against worn paper, index finger against the edges of coins, the small calculation that lived in the back of the brain, rent, gas, food. He looked away back to Mia. The grilled cheese would be here soon. He reached for his water and took a sip. The ice clinked against the glass. "Dad," Mia whispered. Her eyes were not on him. They were fixed past his shoulder. He turned. The small girl had pivoted toward their booth. Her mother was still reading the menu board, lips moving as she traced prices. The girl had found a tray passing by, then another, then Mia's table. Her gaze locked on the empty plate in front of Mia, framed by knife and fork and napkin. There was nothing on it yet, but Mia's menu was open to a picture of the kids' grilled cheese. The photograph showed bread-browned, perfectly cheese stretching in a golden line. The girl's small hands had curled around the edge of a nearby chair, knuckles white. Daniel saw her throat move as she swallowed. Mia dropped her eyes to the menu, then back to the girl. "Why is she looking at my food?" Mia asked, even quieter this time. "She might just be curious," Daniel said. He did not believe that. He could feel the lie in his own mouth. That look was not curiosity. It was the way you looked at food when your stomach had been empty long enough to feel hollow instead of sharp. The waitress arrived with their order. A thick white bowl of tomato soup for Mia, steam rising in soft curls. A grilled cheese sandwich sliced on the diagonal, cheese oozing at the cut. Fries in a small metal basket, salted and hot. The smell hit the air and seemed to twist where the girl stood. Her eyes followed the plate to the table, as if pulled by a string. "Mia," Daniel said softly. She nodded like she understood something, even if she did not have words for it, and scooted back in her seat, hands in her lap. She did not pick up her sandwich. At the counter, the woman had finished counting. She pulled worn bills from her pocket, laying them flat on the surface one by one, then a small pile of coins. She pointed at the menu. "The kids' mac and cheese," she said. "To go, no drink." The host called the order back to the kitchen. The woman nodded, shoulders tense, like she was waiting for someone to say there was not enough. Daniel shifted in his seat. The heat from Mia's fries brushed his arm. He could feel his own pulse picking up that restless beat that came whenever he saw someone standing exactly where he had stood once. He had been outside a diner like this years ago in another city. He had stood on the wrong side of the glass with a baby in his arms and change in his pocket that did not add up to a full meal. He had watched people inside laugh and eat saw plates cleared and taken away with food still on them. The door had opened then. Someone had held it, and his life had bent on that hinge. Now another door, another hinge. This one had a bell and a little sign that said, "Open" in red. "Stay here," he told Mia. "I was not going to eat yet," she said quickly, as if defending herself. "I was going to wait." "I know," he said. "Just stay." He pushed out of the booth and crossed the floor. The soles of his shoes clicked lightly. The heat from the kitchen brushed his cheek as he passed. The bell above the entrance rang as the woman collected a small white bag from the counter and reached for her daughter's hand. "Excuse me," he said. "Ma'am." She stiffened before she turned. Her eyes swept him in one quick pass, taking in the pressed shirt at the watch the way he stood. "Yes," she said. Her voice was flat, but there was something under it. Not impatience, not quite fear, something like bracing for a hit. "I did not mean to intrude," Daniel said. "My daughter and I ordered too much. We were wondering if you and your little girl might like to join us. We could share." The girl's eyes darted up at her mother. Mothers and daughters both pulled tight around the same center. "We're fine," the woman said. "It's no trouble." "It is not about trouble," her jaw clenched. "We do not need your charity." The way she said the last word cut the air. Charity like something sour in her mouth. For a second, the sounds of the restaurant seemed to recede. Just the bell, the hum of the cooler, the distant whistle of a kettle in the kitchen. "I did not mean it like that," Daniel said. "I know exactly how you meant it." Her eyes met his then. They were not empty. They were crowded with things that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with someone else who had once stood in front of her and offered help with a price just out of sight. She tightened her grip on the little girl's hand. "Come on, Zoe," she said. The girl cast one last glance toward the back of the restaurant where Mia sat at the booth near the window. Mia had her hands around her soup bowl, but she was not eating. Their eyes met for a breath. Then the mother pushed the door open. Cold slipped in sharp and thin. The bell rang again as the door swung shut behind them. Daniel stood at the entrance longer than he needed to, looking at the empty space where they had been. The reflections in the glass layered his face over the street outside. For an instant he saw both at once, the man in the warm restaurant, the faint shadow of the younger version of himself outside. He let the door close fully and walked back to the booth. Maya was chewing on her bottom lip. "Are they okay?" she asked. He sat down, feeling the heat of the soup, now cooled a little, smelling the grilled cheese that Mia still had not touched. "I hope so," he said. Maya looked down at her plate, then at the door. "They looked hungry," she said. Daniel folded his napkin more, to give his hands something to do than because it needed folding. The napkin paper crackled softly. "They did," he said. Outside the window, the streetlights glowed against the darkening sky. In the reflection, he could see Mia himself, and the faint ghost of the door behind them, with its little open sign glowing red. A rectangle of glass, a simple thing, and yet it had never felt as heavy in his mind as it did now. "Go ahead and eat," he told Mia. She picked up half of the grilled cheese and bit into it, chewing slowly as if the food tasted different now. Daniel reached for his water again. The ice clinked. His thoughts did not settle. The bell above the door chimed once more for another group of diners, but his mind stayed focused on the sound the door had made when she left, the way her shoulders had been set, and the look in her eyes when she said the word charity. The ride home was quieter than usual. Maya sat in the back seat instead of up front, even though she was old enough now. She leaned her forehead against the cool glass, watching Denver slip by in streaks of orange streetlights and red brake lights. The remains of her grilled cheese sat in a paper box on her lap, the cardboard darkened with a little grease. Daniel kept one hand on the wheel and one elbow propped on the door. The heater hummed, pushing warm air at the windshield, fogging the corners. "Are you mad at me?" Mia asked at last. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were still on the window, but he could see the tight line of her mouth in the reflection. "No," he said. "Why would I be mad at you? I did not eat right away," she said. "I know you get twitchy about food getting cold." He almost laughed. The word twitchy in her voice had a strange comfort. "I am not mad about the sandwich," he said. "You handled that pretty well." "It did not feel like I handled anything," she said. "I just did not know what to do." He knew that feeling. There were times the world sat in front of you like a test you had not studied for. Sometimes that is how it is, he said. Mia finally turned her face away from the glass. She really looked hungry, she said. The little girl, Zoe. You caught her name. Her mom said it, Mia replied. When they left, you were standing there. He remembered the sound of that name pulled like a thread from the moment. He nodded. Yeah, he said. Zoe. They hit a red light. The car rolled to a stop. Outside, a man crossed the street with his collar turned up, hands jammed in his pockets. The light from a liquor store blinked in the corner of Daniel's vision. You tried to help, Mia said quietly. She yelled at you. She did not yell, Daniel said. She said no, that is allowed. It did not sound like just no, Mia said. He could still hear the shape of the word charity in the woman's voice, the way it had scraped along something old. Sometimes no is about a lot of other things, not just the thing in front of you, he said. The light turned green. He pressed the gas. The car moved forward, the engine a low hum under their feet. Mia picked at the edge of the cardboard box. When we were living in the truck, she said, did you ever say no to help? The question slid into the space between them like a stone into water. Tiny ripples moved out from it. She rarely brought that time up. He talked about it even less. I did not get offered much help, he said. Did you ever want to say no? She asked. If someone had offered, he thought of pale fluorescent lights in cheap bathrooms, the smell of old coffee at gas stations, the way he had kept his eyes down to avoid being noticed. He thought of nights when he had walked circles around a parking lot just to keep warm. I wanted to say yes to almost anything, he said, but it depends who is offering and what they want back. Mia went quiet. He heard the faint sound of her breathing, the rustle of her sleeve as she hugged the box closer. I am glad Mrs. Patel wanted you to say yes, Mia said, because if she had not, we would not be here. We would probably still be in the truck, and I would be really squished by now. The image pulled a smile out of him, small and unwilling. He saw it so clearly. Mia, or a version of her long legs and elbows, folded up into the back bench of that old pickup. Yeah, he said, you would be very squished. They turned into their neighborhood, a row of modest houses with porches and small front yards. His place had a narrow lawn, a single maple tree in front, and lights on a timer that flicked on as he pulled into the driveway. He parked and killed the engine. The quiet that followed seemed heavier than the noise. Grab your backpack, he said, and the sandwich. We are not wasting it. I might not eat it, Mia said, but she held the box carefully. Inside, the house smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. The living room held the familiar clutter of their life. A blanket slipping off the couch, a sketchbook on the coffee table, a pair of sneakers abandoned in the middle of the floor. Mia dropped her backpack by the hallway, kicked off her shoes, and padded to the kitchen. Daniel followed, flicking on lights as he went. The kitchen was small, but it was his. Cabinets mismatched from when he had renovated bit by bit a fridge with magnets holding up drawings and school notices. He set his keys in the bowl by the door and emptied his pockets. His fingers brushed paper. He pulled out the receipt from Harbor Grill and set it beside the monitor on the counter. White paper, black ink total, circled in a quick swipe of the pen. To most people, it would be nothing more than trash. For him, receipts still had weight. They were little records of the fact that he could pay. Proof that there had been enough this time, enough in the account, enough in the wallet. He leaned on the counter for a second, head low, eyes on that strip of paper. The number on it was not large. There had been nights where it might as well have been the price of a car. Can I have ice cream, or is that asking for too much happiness in one day? Mia called from the fridge. You can have ice cream, he said, but small. Medium, she bargained. Almost small, he replied. He heard the freezer door open, the rattle of the container, the gentle clank of a spoon in a bowl. He stayed where he was, the edge of the counter under his palms, the smooth laminate warm from the light above. Mia, he called without looking up. Do you remember Mrs. Patel? The lady with the restaurant in Albuquerque, Mia answered between clinks. Who made really spicy potatoes? Those were not that spicy, he said automatically. My tongue cried, she said. So they were. He smiled. The memory played in his mind with more clarity than the room around him. He was back in that city again. Back before this kitchen, before this house. The air had been filled with dust and exhaust, and the smell of fryer oil from small places wedged between laundromats and pawn shops. He had parked his old truck behind Sunrise Diner because the parking lot felt safer than the side of the road. He had cracked the windows just enough so the heat would not suffocate them. Maya had been tiny all-round cheeks and heavy eyelids strapped into a faded car seat, her fist clenched around a stuffed bear so worn its fur had gone thin. He had sat there one morning, stomach gnawing at itself, looking at the diner door. People went in and came out, some with white bags in their hands that left a faint grease stain on the paper. His wallet had held a few crumpled bills and some coins. Gas, diapers, food. That triangle had trapped him. There was never enough to cover all three. He had watched a woman in a floral dress carrying a crate of vegetables through the back door. He had heard the clatter of pots inside the rise and fall of voices. At some point, watching did not feel like enough. At some point, the hunger in his own chest and the weight of his daughter in the back seat pushed him out of the truck. He had gone into the diner, the bell above the door ringing just like the one at Harbor Grill, a high, clear sound. The air inside had smelled of coffee eggs, onions, and oil. A woman stood behind the counter, sari, neatly draped hair pulled back in a clip. Her name tag read, Patel. "Can I help you?" she had asked. He had not planned words. They came out rough. "I need a job," he had said. "Any job. I can wash dishes, I will sweep, whatever you need. I just need to feed my kid." Mrs. Patel had looked at him in a long, careful way. Not cruel, not soft either. Observing, measuring. "You have experience in a kitchen?" she had asked. "Not in a real one," he had said, "but I can learn fast." She had tilted her head, then glanced past him through the glass at the parking lot. Their truck was visible, the back window reflecting light. Maybe she had caught sight of the car seat. He would never know. "Come," she had said after a moment. "Wash dishes. 6 hours. I pay at the end of the shift. You eat now." He had started to protest. She had already turned, calling to someone in the back for a plate. He remembered the heat rising from the food she put in front of him, the way the curry smell hit him so hard his eyes watered. He remembered sitting at a corner table shoveling food into his mouth faster than he meant to, while keeping one eye on the truck outside. At the end of that first shift, his hands raw and wrinkled from soap and hot water, she had pressed cash into his palm and said, "You come back tomorrow." He had stammered thanks words clumsy on his tongue. She had shook her head. "Do not thank me," she had said. "You work. I pay. That is the trade. When you are on your feet, you help someone else. That is all." Now in his Denver kitchen, that memory settled around him like a coat. He picked up the Harbor Grill receipt, rolled it between his fingers until it softened. Mia came in with a bowl of ice cream, a smear already on her cheek. "Dad," she said, "you are staring at the counter like it owes you money." He dropped the receipt into the trash and straightened. "Just thinking," he said. "About the lady and the girl?" Mia asked. "Yeah," he admitted. Mia hopped onto one of the stools and dug her spoon into the ice cream. "Do you think someone like Mrs. Patel will help them?" she asked. He opened the cupboard, took out a glass, and filled it with water. The question hung there, touching the space in him that still felt like a half-healed bruise. "I do not know," he said. He drank the water cool on his tongue and looked at his daughter. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her knees had a scar from a bike fall. Her bowl was full. She caught his eye and lifted one shoulder. "If you see them again," she said, "maybe you can try something that does not sound like charity." Her words were simple, but they tucked themselves into his thoughts with surprising firmness. He watched her eat, listened to the spoon scrape against the bowl, and felt two worlds pressing against each other in his mind. The truck and the house, the diner and the grill, the woman in the floral dress and the woman in the thrift store coat. Later, after Mia brushed her teeth and climbed into bed, he stood in her doorway for a long moment. The nightlight cast soft shapes on the walls. She was already half asleep, arms around her pillow, hair splayed across the sheet. He went to his own room, then passed it to the small room he used as an office. A desk, a laptop, a framed photo propped in the corner. He picked up the photo. In it, he was younger, thinner, standing in front of a narrow storefront with Sunrise Diner painted above the door. Mrs. Patel stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder, her smile bright and steady. The door behind them had a sign that said "Open" in red letters. His own face in the picture looked as if he had just stepped through that door and not yet believed he was allowed. He touched the edge of the frame with his thumb, then set it back carefully. The house was quiet. Outside, a car passed its headlights, sweeping briefly through the blinds. Lines of light moved across the wall, like the memory of a window on a different building in a different city. He turned off the office light and walked back down the hall. The image of Harper and Zoe pressed at the back of his mind, refusing to fade. Somewhere in the city, there was a woman counting bills in her pocket and a girl watching other people eat. He paused by the front door for a second, looking at the simple rectangle of wood and glass. Some doors opened on a job, some on a hot meal, some on a chance. He locked it for the night and went to bed, his thoughts still caught between the past and the faces he had seen through the restaurant window. The next morning, the city woke up under a pale sky and the kind of thin sunlight that did not give much heat. Daniel brewed coffee, packed Mia's lunch, and drove her to school. The usual routine slid into place, but the image of Harper and Zoe stayed close. He answered emails, sat through a video call with a client in Chicago, and reviewed a proposal. The work filled the hours, yet every quiet moment seemed to tilt back toward that booth at Harbor Grill. Around noon, he stared at his calendar. There was a gap after his last call, a clear strip of time. He closed his laptop, grabbed his coat, and left the office. City Park sat just east of downtown, a spread of trees and winding paths, and a lake that caught the light in broken pieces. He had taken Mia there plenty of times, but not often during the week. He parked near the playground and stepped out into the cold air. The smell of damp leaves and faint exhaust drifted together. Somewhere a dog barked. A group of kids chased each other near the swings, their voices sharp and high. He scanned the benches and the grassy slopes without meaning to. No thrift store coat, no small figure with a too big backpack. He sat anyway. The wooden slats of the bench were cool through his coat. He watched ducks move across the water in tight clusters, their bodies leaving soft ripples. The sky reflected in the lake, dull silver, broken by each passing bird. He sat for 15 minutes, then 20. He checked his phone, scrolled through a few messages, then slid it back into his pocket. A jogger passed. A couple pushed a stroller along the path. The air smelled like wet earth and the distant sweetness of someone eating an orange. After half an hour, he stood and walked back to the car. On the way home that evening, he mentioned the park to Mia. "City Park," she said, "with the lake and the geese that bully everyone." "Those are very confident geese," he said. "They tried to eat my cracker," she replied, "with the plastic still on." "Do you want to go tomorrow after school?" he asked. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Can I bring bread that is not plastic?" He smiled at the road. "We will see about the bread," he said. The next day, he waited in the school pickup line until Mia came out, backpack bouncing against her back. "We are going to the park, right?" she said, tugging open the car door. "Yes," he said, "we are going to the park." She climbed in, chattering about a science experiment gone wrong, and a classmate who had tried to glue glitter to his eyebrows. The school slid away behind them, replaced by trees and the wide curve of the park road. This time the playground was busier. Children clung to monkey bars, swung from them, hung upside down. Parents and caregivers stood in clusters, cups of coffee in hand. The smell of hot dogs from a food cart drifted on the breeze. Daniel did not see Harper and Zoe at first. He let Mia run ahead to the swings and followed at a slower pace, shoving his hands deep into his coat pockets. He chose a bench with a view of the playground and sat. He watched Mia pump her legs on the swing, her hair flying behind her. Her laugh reached him in fragments. He might have left it at that if not for the flash of a familiar backpack near the slide. The backpack with one frayed strap and a small patch shaped like a star. Zoe stood at the bottom of the slide, waiting her turn. Her hair was still cut short, still curling around her ears. She wore a red jacket that looked a little too thin for the temperature. Harper sat on a bench farther down the path, close enough to see everything, far enough to keep some distance from the other adults. A sketchbook balanced on her knees. Her eyes moved between the book and her daughter, always circling back to Zoe. Daniel let his gaze pass over them and move on, not letting it snag. He did not stand. He did not wave. He stayed where he was. If Harper had seen him, she gave no sign. Her shoulders were drawn up as if braced against the cold, or something sharper. Mia launched herself off the swing and landed with a stumble, then straightened. She brushed her hands on her jeans and looked around. When she spotted Zoe, her face brightened. "There she is," Mia said under her breath. She jogged over without waiting for permission. Daniel sat a little straighter, but did not call her back. Mia reached the bottom of the slide just as Zoe stepped aside for another kid. "Hey," Mia said. Zoe blinked, then squinted as if trying to place her. "You were at the restaurant?" Mia said. "With your mom." Zoe's posture tightened for a second, then eased when she recognized Mia. "You had the grilled cheese," Zoe said. "Yeah," Mia replied. "You have a good memory." Zoe shrugged, looking down at her worn sneakers. "It smelled really good," she said. A boy slid down between them, hitting the ground with a thump. They both stepped back to make room, then stepped forward again. "I am Mia," Maya said. "Just so you know my name and not just my sandwich." "Zoe," the other girl answered. "But you heard that already." "Do you want to swing?" Maya asked. Zoe glanced toward the bench where Harper sat. Her mother had looked up from the sketchbook. Their eyes met across the playground. Harper's hand tightened on the pen. Zoe lifted a hand in a small gesture that was half question, half request. Harper studied her for a heartbeat, then gave a tiny nod. Zoe turned back. "Okay," she said. They headed for an empty set of swings. Mia took the left, Zoe the right. Daniel watched them from his bench, his chest tight for reasons that had nothing to do with the cold air. "Your dad is here," Zoe said, glancing toward Daniel. "Yeah," Mia said. "He is trying to look like he is not watching me every second, but he is very bad at it." Zoe smiled, then bit her lip as she pushed off from the ground. Her sneakers scraped against the wood chips. The chains rattled. Harper pretended to return to her sketching. Her eyes flicked up every few seconds. The lines she drew seemed more like shapes and shadows than anything solid. Daniel stayed where he was. He felt the urge to stand to move closer to say something, but he let the urge pass. The distance between his bench and Harper's felt like a thin strip of ice not safe to cross yet. The girls swung higher. Their voices floated across the space. "My mom works late sometimes," Zoe said. "We do not go out a lot. My dad orders takeout when he burns dinner," Mia replied, "which is a lot." "I do not burn it," Daniel muttered under his breath, then realized no one could hear him. "What do you burn?" Zoe asked. "Mostly grilled cheese," Mia said. Zoe laughed, a small sound that grew as the swing carried her up. They talked about school, favorite colors, a cartoon both of them watched. Simple things, ordinary things. The conversation skipped and bounced. Harper closed her sketchbook without drawing anything more and put it back in her bag. She clasped her hands together in her lap, fingers locking and unlocking. After a while, Mia slowed her swing, letting it drift to a stop. Zoe followed. "I need water," Mia said. "Do you want some? My dad always packs too much." Zoe hesitated. "I would have to ask my mom," she said. "Okay," Mia replied. "Mine is the man trying not to stare." They walked together toward Daniel. Zoe's steps were lighter than they had been at the restaurant, still cautious but lighter. As they approached, Daniel straightened and let his hands fall from his pockets. Mia stopped in front of him. "Can we give Zoe one of the waters?" she asked. "Please." Daniel looked at Zoe. Up close in daylight, he could see the dark half-moons under her eyes, the way her jacket sleeves were frayed at the cuffs. "Of course," he said. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a bottle, then held it out. He made sure to place it on the bench between them, not directly in her hand. "For you," he said, "if your mom is okay with it." Zoe took the bottle, fingers barely brushing his. Her voice was soft. "Thank you," she said. Harper had risen from her bench. She stood now at a measured distance watching. Her eyes were wary, not sharp enough to cut like they had at Harbor Grill, but not open either. Zoe trotted back to her, holding up the bottle. They exchanged a few words that did not carry across the playground. Harper's hand went briefly to her daughter's hair, smoothing it back. Then they both turned and walked toward the swings again. The water bottle rested under the bench condensation, forming a small circle on the wood. Mia hopped onto the bench beside Daniel and swung her legs. "You did good," she said. "I handed over a bottle of water," he replied. "I know," she said. "You did it without making a weird face." He let out a breath he had not realized he had been holding. "I am doing my best," he said. They stayed until the sky began to slide toward late afternoon, the light turning softer. When they finally left, Harper and Zoe were still at the park. Daniel did not walk over to say anything. He drove home with the window cracked open, the cool air clearing his head. In his chest there was a feeling he could not quite name, something between patience and restlessness. He did not know if the park would be part of their routine now. He only knew that it no longer felt like any other place. The image of two girls on swings had joined the collection of pictures in his mind that refused to fade. The park became a quiet habit. Not every day. Life did not allow that. There were afternoons when meetings ran long, when traffic clogged the streets, when Mia had homework and grumbled about math. On those days, City Park passed by only as a strip of trees in the distance. Other days there was time. Sometimes they found the swings empty, and the benches scattered with fallen leaves, and there was no red jacket, no frayed backpack. They stayed anyway. Mia made up stories about the geese as they waddled in crooked lines. Daniel scrolled through emails and answered a call or two, his eyes drifting to the path where a thrift store coat might appear. Then there were the days when the coat was already there. The first time Daniel saw Harper again after that afternoon, with the water bottle, she was standing near the playground fence, both hands wrapped around a paper cup from a coffee cart. Zoe was at the sandbox, half crouched, building a lopsided castle. Mia spotted Zoe before he did. "She is here," Mia said, her hand already on the seatbelt. "Seatbelt off first," Daniel said, "then park reunion." She clicked the buckle open and bolted toward the playground as soon as her sneakers hit the ground. By the time Daniel closed the car door, Mia was at the edge of the sandbox telling Zoe some long, complicated story that involved a dragon and a science quiz. Harper noticed him as he approached. He could tell by the way her shoulders shifted a small stiffening that he recognized now as alertness. She did not look away this time. She took a sip from her cup, eyes on him, then on the girls. "Hi," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. Her gaze lingered on him for a beat. "Afternoon," she said. It was not warm, but it was not the sharp no from the restaurant either. He nodded and moved past her to a bench near the fence. From there he could see both girls and the curve of the lake beyond. He sat, pulled out his phone, and a folder of printed notes. The words on the paper did not settle easily. His attention kept floating to the sandbox where Mia and Zoe were now digging side by side, heads bent close. Sand stuck to Zoe's knees. A streak landed on Mia's cheek. They laughed at something only they could hear. The afternoon light slanted across the park, catching in Zoe's hair. Harper shifted her weight, as if ready to move at the first sign of trouble. Her coffee steamed in the chill air. Over the next week, scenes like that repeated. Different days, different times. The details changed. The shape remained. One day, the girls invented a game with the metal bars on the climbing structure hanging and dropping, timing their jumps. Another day, they shared a small notebook and passed a pen back and forth, each drawing half of a creature that ended up with 6 legs and a crooked smile. Harper and Daniel orbited the same space without colliding. He sat on one bench, she chose another, always leaving an empty stretch between. She kept her sketchbook on her lap, pencil moving in slow strokes. He held a book or his phone, though he read the same paragraph 3 times. Their eyes met occasionally. A nod passed between them, sometimes nothing more. When the girls ran from one side of the playground to the other, they crossed that thin line between the benches again and again, a moving bridge neither adult seemed ready to step onto. One afternoon, the sky was a clear, hard blue. The air had a bite that hinted at winter. The trees were losing the last of their leaves, small brown scraps that fell and landed in the grass. Daniel and Mia arrived to find the swings empty. They claimed their usual bench. Mia shrugged off her backpack and dug out a crumpled packet of crackers. "For the geese," she said. "They do not need more confidence," Daniel replied. "They are my army," she said. She ran down toward the water, calling to the birds. They came in a low, honking rush, their feet slapping the ground, their eyes bright and greedy. Daniel stayed on the bench and watched his daughter negotiate with a crowd of birds, much larger than her. She waved her arms, scolded them, laughed when one got too close, and almost stole a cracker from her hand. He was so focused on Mia that he did not notice Harper at first. When he did, she was already halfway to the bench where he sat. She carried no coffee cup this time, no sketchbook. Her hands were tucked into her jacket pockets. Zoe walked at her side, ponytail askew, clutching a thin scarf. Harper paused a few feet away. "Is anyone sitting there?" she asked, nodding at the far end of the bench. Daniel shook his head. "No," he said. "Help yourself." She sat, leaving a careful space between them, enough that their coats did not touch, even if they both leaned back. Zoe went straight toward the water, stopped when the geese turned their attention to her, then laughed when Mia shoved crackers into her palm and made introductions. "They are vicious," Harper said, watching the scene. "That is one word," Daniel said. "Mia calls them her army." Harper's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but not far from it. "Of course she does," she said. For a while, that was all. They sat side by side and watched their daughter scatter crumbs, squealing, when the geese surged forward, then retreating, then advancing again. The bench creaked softly as they shifted their weight from time to time. A cyclist rode past behind them, wheels humming on the path. Somewhere across the park, a siren wailed briefly and faded. "She talks about your daughter," Harper said eventually. Daniel turned his head slightly. "Zoe talks about Mia," she clarified. "At home, a lot." "Good things, I hope," he said. "She thinks Mia is the bravest person alive," Harper said, "because she yelled at a goose." Daniel exhaled a short, surprised sound. "Is just A sound? That tracks, he said. Harper watched him for a moment, his profile the way his eyes stayed with the girls. You come here often, she said. When I can, he answered. Work gets in the way sometimes. What kind of work? She asked. He glanced at her, sensing the test inside the simple question. Consulting, he said. I help small companies figure out how not to sink. She nodded as if filing that away. That sounds vague, she said. It is, he replied, which is how I keep getting hired. Something like a smile finally reached her eyes. It softened her face, made her look younger, less guarded. She watched the girls again. Zoe likes it here, she said. There is space. There is space, he agreed. They fell back into silence, but it was different from the ones before. Less like a wall, more like a shared blanket pulled up to the same line. The wind picked up, sliding across the surface of the lake, ruffling the water. A plastic bag skittered along the path before catching on a bush. The geese decided they had had enough crackers and waddled back to the shoreline, muttering to themselves. Mia and Zoe trudged back up the slight slope, cheeks red, hands chilled. We cannot feel our fingers, Mia announced. Zoe nodded in agreement, blowing on her hands. Then it is time to sit, Daniel said. You can warm up here. The bench was not wide enough for all of them, without some rearranging. Mia squeezed herself between Daniel and Harper, with no hesitation at all. Zoe perched on the edge of the wood next to her mother. Maya bumped shoulders with Harper, then froze for a fraction of a second, aware she had done it. Harper looked down at her, then shifted just enough to give Mia more room instead of moving away. Sorry, Mia said. It is fine, Harper replied. You are not very heavy. The girls giggled at that. The warmth from their small bodies seeped into the adults on either side. Zoe leaned into her mother's arm. Mom, did you see the big goose? She said. He chased the other geese away, but Mia chased him. I saw, Harper said. Harper said, very brave. Mia lifted her chin. They respect me now, she said. They think you are one of them, Daniel said. Harper huffed a soft sound that might have been a laugh. The girls pulled out the notebook from Mia's backpack and began drawing again, heads almost touching. Their pens scratched across the paper, creating another strange creature, this one with wings and 3 eyes. Daniel and Harper sat with their shoulders just close enough that they felt each other's breathing in the smallest movements. The space between them had narrowed to something that felt less like distance and more like room. After a while, Harper spoke again, her voice low enough that the girls would not catch it. I noticed something, she said. Daniel shifted his attention from the drawings to her. You have been careful, she said. You did not walk over to us at the swings. You did not push anything today. You let them come to you. He thought about his steps, the spaces he had left open. I figured you have had enough of people who do not leave you choices, he said. Her gaze flicked to him sharp just for an instant, then softened. She looked back at the girls, their hands moving in quick strokes, the pages filling. I appreciate that, she said. 3 simple words. No extra warmth wrapped around them. Yet they carried more weight than many speeches he had heard in boardrooms. He nodded, not trusting his mouth to find the right response, without adding something that would tip the balance. A cloud slid over the sun and the light shifted cooler. One of the park lamps flickered on even though it was not yet dark. The girls finished their drawing and held it up for inspection. It is a goose dragon, Zoe announced. It honks fire. Mia added, and it only eats plastic bread. They laughed at their own joke, the sound clear in the cool air. The moment settled around the bench in a way that felt solid. No agreements had been made, no promises spoken, just 4 people sharing a piece of wood and a small rectangle of quiet in a big restless city. When they finally stood to leave, coats zipped up against the chill, the path from one bench to the other no longer felt like ice. It felt walked, marked lightly by the footsteps that had gone back and forth all afternoon. The air shifted a little colder with each passing day. Leaves that had clung stubbornly to branches last week now lay piled along the paths. The park crew had blown some into neat mounds, but the wind kept undoing their work, scattering yellows and browns back into loose drifts. One Saturday, the sky was a clear, brittle blue. You could see your breath if you laughed too hard. Mia and Zoe were determined to test that theory. Watch, Mia said, puffing clouds into the air. Zoe copied her, giggling, when her breath made a small white blur. They were racing from one end of the playground to the other, scarves trailing boots thumping on the packed dirt. Daniel sat on the same bench he always chose now. Habit had carved a path from the parking lot to that spot. The wood under him felt familiar. Harper arrived a little later than usual. Zoe spotted her first and sprinted over scarf flapping to deliver a breathless update on their goose army and a swing trick Mia had mastered. Harper listened a hand on her daughter's shoulder, then sent her back with a quick squeeze. She walked toward Daniel, her pace unhurried, her eyes already on the bench. "Mind if I sit?" she asked. He shook his head. "No," he said. "Please." She sat on the far end again. This time the space between them was smaller, without either of them having to measure it. The girls had started some complicated game that involved jumping from the second step of the slide ladder and pretending the ground was lava. Their shouts echoed against the bare branches. For a while, the only sounds at the bench were those voices, the rustle of leaves, the faint rush of cars from the street beyond the trees. Harper rubbed her hands together, then tucked them into her pockets. She wore fingerless gloves that had seen better days. The yarn at the wrist was thinning. "You were right," she said quietly. Daniel turned his head. "About what?" he asked. "You said you figured I had had enough of people who do not leave me choices," she replied. Her eyes stayed on the playground, but he could hear something different in her voice. Less clipped. Not softer exactly, but less guarded. "I have," she said. He let the words settle. The urge to fill the space with a question tugged at him, but he kept it in. Zoe jumped from the ladder, landed with both feet, and threw her arms up like a gymnast. Mia clapped, then took her turn. Harper exhaled slowly. "My husband left 2 years ago," she said. Daniel did not move. He did not prompt. He waited. "He did not shout or throw things," she went on. "He did not even slam the door. He just got dressed one morning, drank his coffee, put his cup in the sink, and said he had packed his bags the night before." Her mouth curved, but it was not a smile. "He told me I would be better off," she said, "like he was doing me a favor." "Did he leave a note?" Daniel asked. "Just his key," she said. "On the counter, that was it." Maya shouted something to Zoe about taking turns. The girls shifted their game to the monkey bars. "I had been staying home with Zoe since she was born," Harper continued. "We agreed it made more sense. Daycare costs more than my last job paid. He said he would take care of us." Her tongue lingered on the word take, as if trying to decide whether it had ever been true. "I did not have recent references," she said, "or a degree anyone cared about. The jobs I could get did not line up with school hours. Every application felt like dropping a pebble into a well and never hearing it hit the bottom." She pulled one hand from her pocket and traced the seam of her jeans with a thumb. The nail was short, the skin around it rough. "We were 3 months behind on rent," she said. "The landlord was kind for a while, then less kind. I started selling what we had that anyone would buy. The TV, extra chairs, jewelry I never liked anyway." She gave a short, soundless laugh. "It is funny what you think you need until you need something else more," she said. He knew that truth in the scrape of his own bones. "That is when I met Victor," she said. She did not spit the name. She rolled it out flat like a piece of paper she had examined too many times. "He came into the cafe where I was filling out applications," she said. "Suit watch, perfect haircut. He asked if he could share the table. I said yes, because saying no felt like a luxury then." She glanced at Daniel as if expecting judgment. He kept his face open. "He saw the stack of applications," she said. "Asked what kind of work I was looking for. I said anything. He smiled and said that was his specialty." Her jaw tightened. "He owns gyms," she said. 3, maybe 4. I did not understand the details. What I heard was that he needed administrative help. Scheduling, answering calls, paperwork, stuff I knew I could do. She pulled her hand back into her pocket and kept talking as if the words had started and could not be stopped now. "He said the hours were flexible," she said, "that I could bring Zoe sometimes, that he liked helping single parents get back on their feet." She shook her head slightly. "I wanted to believe him so much," she said. "That is the part that makes me angriest when I think about it. How badly I wanted it to be true." Zoe and Mia reached the end of the monkey bars and jumped down landing in a pile of leaves someone had failed to rake all the way. They both disappeared for a second, then popped up laughing. "At first it was fine," Harper said. "The job was real. He paid on time. He did not hover. He gave me a nicer chair when he saw my back hurt. Told me I was smart. Told me I deserved better than what life had handed me." There was a trace of his voice in her imitation, something slick under the words. "Then he started asking for favors," she said. "Little ones. Can you stay an hour later? I need to finish this deal. Can you come to dinner with this client? It looks better if I'm not alone." Her eyes stayed on the field, but her focus had turned inward. Daniel could see it in the way her breathing changed slower and more controlled. He would say it with that smile, she said, the one that makes it sound like the favor is already done. And every time he reminded me how much he had done, how he took a chance on me, how I should be grateful. Her lip curled almost invisible. I wore the dress he suggested, she said. I stayed late. I bit my tongue when his hand stayed on my back too long when he introduced me to people. She made a small motion with her shoulders as if trying to shake something off. When I started saying no, his voice changed, she said. He did not shout. He did not have to. He told me I was making a mistake, that people would not line up to hire a single mom with gaps in her work history, that he could make those gaps look like craters. A gust of wind moved across the park, stirring the leaves at their feet. Harper did not flinch. I quit, she said. Walked out on a Tuesday. I thought he would be angry for a while, and then find someone else to push around. She took a breath through her nose. He called every place I applied to, she said. I know because one of the managers told me. He said Victor had warned him I was unstable, that I would cause drama, that I might try to sue. Her voice did not crack. If anything, it flattened more, as if keeping emotion at arm's length was the only way to move the story from one end of her mind to the other. We lost the apartment, she said. The shelter had thin blankets and bright lights that never really went off. Zoe started grinding her teeth in her sleep. She stared at her daughter now, standing under a tree, with Mia arranging leaves by color on the ground. I got a job at a laundromat that paid cash, she said. No one asked questions because they did not want to know the answers. It barely covers food and the room we rent, but at least it is something he does not have his hands in. She went silent for a moment. The only sound was the shriek of a distant whistle from a pickup soccer game. That is what I think about when a man in a nice coat offers to pay for my dinner, she said, or invites me to sit with his family like I am some project. There was no accusation in her tone now, just explanation laid out plain. Daniel absorbed every word. He did not rush to say he was different. The idea felt flimsy compared to what she had described. I am sorry, he said. I am tired of hearing that, she replied, from people who cannot do anything about it. She turned her head, then really looking at him. That is why I kept waiting for you to show me what you really wanted, she said. At the restaurant at the park, men like Victor always want something. It just takes a few nice gestures before the price tag shows up. And you think my price tag is still hiding, he said quietly. I think I do not know you, she said. Not really. I know you bring your daughter to the park. I know she is kind to mine. I know you are polite. I know you bought us time in a hospital we could not afford. Her throat moved as she swallowed. I just do not know what that will cost yet, she said. Zoe and Mia ran toward them, arguing about whether leaves could be money in a game they had invented. Zoe held up a handful of red and gold eyes bright. Look, she said breathless. We are rich. Harper reached out and brushed a stray piece of hair from her daughter's forehead. You are something, she said. She dropped her hand and leaned back again, her shoulders touching the bench. She did not pull away. Daniel watched the girls for a moment, then spoke, his voice low. You are right to be careful, he said. Someone taught you there is always a bill coming. Her eyes flicked to his face. I cannot erase that, he said. I would not try. I can only show up and not ask you to pay for it. She did not answer, not with words. Her fingers resting on her knee curled in and then loosened. The motion was small, almost nothing, yet in it there was a shift, not trust, not yet, but the faintest easing of a grip that had been tight for a long time. The girls tumbled back into their game. A leaf stuck in Mia's hair. Zoe tried to pluck it out and missed, both of them laughing as they tried again. On the bench, two adults sat in the cold, their breath visible in the air, a story heavier than the temperature passing between them and settling finally where it could be seen. The light started to drain from the sky, turning the edges of the park gray. The girls showed no sign of slowing. They had moved on from leaves to a new game that involved balancing on the low stone border along the path, arms out pretending the grass was an ocean. Harper watched them, the corners of her mouth pulled in that tight way Daniel was beginning to recognize. There was pride in it, and fear, and something else that did not have an easy name. You asked earlier what kind of work I do, he said. She blinked as if pulled back from whatever memory she had been walking through. I remember, she said. I was not trying to dodge the question, he added. I really do help companies figure out how not to sink. strategy operations, that kind of thing. I started my own firm about 5 years ago. On your own, she said. Mostly, he replied. Not really on my own. His gaze drifted past the playground as though the park had become a screen for some other scene entirely. There was a diner, he said, in Albuquerque. Sunrise Diner, yellow sun painted with too many rays. The kind of place where you can get pancakes at midnight. You worked there, she asked. I slept in their parking lot first, he said. The admission did not come with shame in his voice, only a kind of worn-out honesty. Mia and I were in an old truck, he said. It leaked when it rained. The heat worked sometimes. I would park behind the diner because it felt safer than the street. He could still hear the clatter of plates, the buzz of the neon sign, the murmur of late-night customers. I was running on fumes, he said. Money, patience, sleep. All of it. Harper was quiet. Her eyes stayed on Zoe, but her attention had turned fully toward him. One morning I went inside, he said. I asked if they needed anyone to wash dishes. My plan was to work long enough to buy food and then figure out the rest later. He could feel the roughness of that day on his skin even now. The owner, Mrs. Patel, looked at me like I was some math problem she was solving in her head, he said. She asked if I had ever worked in a kitchen. I said no, not really. She asked if I could follow instructions. I said yes. He smiled a little at the memory. She told me to put on an apron and get to the sink, he said. She fed us before she paid me. I tried to refuse. She ignored me. Harper's mouth twitched. How generous! She said the words edged with the same wariness as before. It did not feel like generosity, he said. Not in the way you mean. She made it clear this was a job. I was not her charity project. I was staff. He remembered the way she had corrected him when he had stumbled over the word, thank you, too many times. She told me something that stuck, he said. She said, I am not saving you. I am hiring you. You show up, you work hard. I pay you what I can. That is the arrangement. He let the words hang there a moment. And then she said, if it helps, good. If one day you are in a position to help someone else, you do it. That is how you pay me back. Not to me, to the world. Harper shifted her shoulder, brushing the back of the bench. So you think I am your chance to keep some promise? She said. I think I owe a lot of people a debt that cannot go back to them directly, he said. So I look for ways to move it forward. She was silent. A crow called from the top of a bare tree, harsh against the softer sounds of the park. That does not mean you are an obligation, he said, or a project, or a box to check. I bought you at the restaurant and remembered what it felt like to stand on that kind of edge. That is all. Her jaw relaxed by a fraction. You could have just handed me money, she said. I thought about it, he admitted, for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered how much I hated when people pressed cash into my hand like they were wiping off guilt. She nodded slowly. That at least she understood. The job, he said, careful now. At my firm, I need help with administrative work. Scheduling invoices, client emails, making sure I do not forget where I am supposed to be. I could hire a stranger from an agency. That is what I have done before. Or I can offer you a shot at it. He felt her body go still beside him, a tiny pause along her spine. Here it is, she said under her breath. The price. It is not a gift, he said. You would interview like anyone else. If you get it, you would be paid like anyone else. You could quit if you wanted. I could let you go if it did not work out. It is a job, not a favor. She did not answer. Mia needs someone to keep us from drowning in calendars, he added, trying to cut the tension with a small line of humor. She says I forget too many school things. Do you, Harper asked, expect me to be grateful every day if I take it? I expect you to show up on time and do the work, he said. That is it. Do you expect me to stay late whenever you ask? So I remember who helped me when I was desperate. Her voice had a bitter rhythm now, mimicking someone else. No, he said. If I ever make you feel like you owe me your life, I hope you quit right then. He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. The edges were slightly worn from his wallet. He did not hold it out to her directly. He set it on the bench between them. The card sat there small and white. Cruz and Partners, his name, a phone number, an email. Harper stared at it as if it might come with invisible ink only she could read. You are asking me to walk into your office, she said, to sit in a room you control, to answer questions, to give you more of my history than you have already. I am asking you to consider it, he said. You can throw the card away as soon as you walk out of the park. You can call in a week, or never. He shrugged his shoulders tight. "You do not ever have to tell me what you decided," he said. "Not unless you want the job." The girls had come back within earshot now, cheeks flushed from the cold. They had collected a few round stones from near the path and were arguing about whether they looked more like precious gems or alien eggs. Harper reached down and picked up the card. She did not put it in her pocket. She turned it over once, twice, as if checking both sides for fine print. "Why me?" she asked E. He thought about the easiest answer, that he needed an assistant anyway, that this would solve a practical problem. It would. That was true. He thought about the harder answer, the one that lived in the shape of Zoe's thin hands wrapped around a chair at Harbor Grill, and the way Harper had stood like a shield in front of her. "You are obviously competent," he said. "You kept your life together through things that should have broken it. You are good with details. You watch everything." She snorted softly. "That just means I am paranoid," she said. "It means you are aware," he replied. "That is valuable where I work." She finally put the card away, sliding it into the pocket of her jeans. The movement was small but decisive. "I do not want pity in a blazer," she said. "If you ever feel that from me, you can tell me to keep my job," he said. Zoe and Mia barreled up the small hill toward them, boots slipping on the leaves, laughter spilling ahead of them. "Mom," Zoe said out of breath, "could Mia come over sometime, like to our place?" Harper blinked, thrown for a second by the shift. "Maybe," she said slowly. "We will see." "She always says that," Zoe told Mia. "Sometimes it means yes later." "Sometimes it means no forever," Harper replied, but her tone held no real sting. Mia looked at her father. "Could Zoe come to our place too?" she asked. "I could show her the painting I did of the goose that looks like you." Daniel frowned. "The goose does not look like me," he said. "It has your eyebrows," Mia insisted. Harper let out a short laugh. It surprised even her. The sound felt strange in her chest, like something that had forgotten how to move. "We will figure it out," Daniel said, "if it works for everyone." The girls accepted that answer more easily than adults might. They returned to their argument about alien eggs and ran back down the hill, their voices fading and rising again. Harper watched them go, then looked at Daniel. "I am tired," she said, "of being punished for the times I believed people." He nodded. "I cannot change what happened with Victor," he said. "If you decide every man in a decent coat is a threat, I will not pretend that is irrational." She studied his face as if searching for a crack. "If I call," she said, tapping her pocket where the card rested, "and you treat me like a charity case, I walk out." "Good," he said. "If I call and you expect me to trade anything but my time and work, I walk out." "Also good," he said. She drew in a slow breath, then let it out. "Then we will see," she said. There was no promise straightened inside those words. Only an opening, narrow but real. The sun had lowered enough that the tops of the trees were dipped in gold. Light glanced off the windows of cars along the street, throwing small flashes across the park. The girls chased one of those flashes like a little moving treasure. Harper rose from the bench, calling to Zoe that it was almost time to go. Daniel stayed seated, watching as they gathered their things. As she walked past him, Harper paused just long enough to speak under her breath. "Thank you," she said. He turned his head. "For what?" he asked. "For putting the card on the bench," she said. "Not in my hand." Then she walked away, her daughter falling into step beside her, the outline of their two figures stretching long across the grass. The card stayed in Harper's pocket for 3 days. She felt it every time she reached for change at the laundromat, the edge of it catching her fingertip. She thought about throwing it away each night when she emptied her jeans onto the small dresser in the room she shared with Zoe. Each night, she put it back. At the laundromat, the air was heavy with steam and detergent. Machines thudded and whirred in constant rhythm. Metal carts squeaked along the floor. Harper fed quarters into a washer until her fingers smelled like worn metal. A customer asked her where the dryer sheets were. Another wanted change for a 20. Life carried on in hums and clanks around her, but the presence of that small rectangle of cardstock in her pocket pulled at her thoughts like a loose thread. On the 4th day, she stood in the narrow back room with its mop bucket and wire shelf and took the card out. The print on it looked too clean for the space. She stared at the phone number until it blurred. She did not have a smartphone, only an old flip phone with a scratched screen. Reception inside the building was bad. She stepped out the back door, the metal cold under her hand, and leaned against the alley wall. The sky over the brick buildings was a dull white. A delivery truck idled around the corner. Somewhere a radio played a song she half recognized. She opened the phone, folded the card in one hand so she could see the numbers, and dialed. Each ring felt longer than the last. She almost hung up on the third one. On the fourth, the line clicked. "This is Daniel," a voice said. She swallowed. "It is Harper," she said. "Harper Lane, from City Park." A pause, then a shift in his tone lighter. "Hi," he said. "I am glad you called." "I am at work," she said quickly. "I do not have long." "Understood," he said. "Do you want to schedule an interview?" The word interview sat differently than offer. It made something in her shoulders relax by a fraction. "Is the job still available?" she asked. "It is," he said. "How about Monday morning, 9 o'clock? Can you make that work?" She thought of the laundromat schedule, the bus route, Zoe's school drop-off. The pieces lined up in her mind. "I can be there," she said. He gave her the address. She wrote it on the back of the card with a pen she borrowed from the counter. "Bring a resume if you have one," he said. "If you do not, that is okay. We will talk through your experience." "I have one," she said, though it was out of date and creased from being folded into different purses over the years. "All right," he said. "If anything changes, you can call this number back. Otherwise, I will see you Monday." She closed the phone. The alley felt too small suddenly. She slipped the card into her wallet next to a snapshot of Zoe at age 3 in a paper party hat. On Monday, Harper arrived 15 minutes early. The building that housed Cruz and Partners was not a tower of glass downtown, but a modest 3-story brick structure with a coffee shop on the ground floor and 2 small firms above. The lobby smelled faintly of espresso and printer toner. She paused at the glass door that listed the businesses inside. Her reflection looked back at her. She smoothed her hair, adjusted the collar of her best blouse, and climbed the stairs. The office had clean lines and plants that looked real, not plastic. A wall of windows let in thin winter light. Desks were arranged in a way that felt open but not exposed. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a sweater that matched her lipstick sat at the front desk typing. "Good morning," she said without looking up. "How can I help you?" "I am here to see Mr. Cruz," Harper said, "for an interview." The woman hit one last key, then glanced up. "You must be Harper," she said. "I am Karen. He is just finishing a call. Have a seat." There was no surprise, no once-over, no lifted brow, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement. Harper sat in a chair near the window. Her resume rested in a manila folder in her lap. The paper inside had a faint ripple from the time it had gotten damp in a bag. She resisted the urge to smooth it. Voices murmured from the hallway. A door latch clicked. Daniel appeared, a tie slightly askew, a folder under his arm. "Harper," he said. "Hi, thank you for coming." He held the office door open for her, then gestured to a chair across from his desk. The room was tidy, but lived in. Papers in neat stacks, a mug with a coffee ring near the base, a corkboard with color-coded sticky notes. On the corner of the desk sat the same frame photograph he kept in his home office of a younger version of himself, standing in front of Sunrise Diner with Mrs. Patel. He did not point it out. "Can I get you water, coffee?" he asked. "Water would be nice," she said. He stepped out, returned with a glass, set it within her reach, then sat down. He opened a notebook and picked up a pen. "All right," he said. "You know I am Daniel. You have met Mia. You have not met my work brain yet. That part of me is much less charming." The joke was small, but it eased something. "If you can slide your resume across, I will take a look," he said. She handed over the folder. He scanned the page, eyes moving quickly. He did not linger on the gaps. She knew exactly where they were. Times marked only by the phrase, family care. "You have done customer service, scheduling, bookkeeping," he said. "You kept a cafe running with 2 staff. That is not nothing." "That was a long time ago," she said. "Skills do not expire," he replied. "They can get rusty. Rust can be brushed off." He asked about her experience with spreadsheets, with email clients, with taking messages, and prioritizing. When he touched the subject of the gym job, he did so lightly. "This position with Hale Fitness," he said, eyes still on the page. "How long were you there?" 6 months, she said. "And your duties?" he asked. "Admin work," she said. "Phones, calendars, membership billing." "Why did you leave?" he asked. The question sat between them. He looked up. His expression was neutral, letting her decide how much to put into the answer. "I no longer felt safe there," she said. He nodded, once wrote nothing down. "Understood," he said, and did not press. He described the work at Cruz and Partners in more detail. The volume of emails, the kinds of clients. the need for someone who could keep track of moving pieces and tell him when he was about to drop one. "I am very good at noticing what might fall apart," she said before she could stop herself. He smiled. "That is exactly the kind of paranoia we like here," he said. The hour passed in a pattern of question and answer, practical and focused. He did not talk about helping or giving chances. He talked about start times, pay rates, benefits, and expectations. "There is a 3-month probationary period," he said at the end, "for anyone we hire. During that time, either of us can decide it is not a fit with 1 week's notice. After that, we commit more formally." He slid a printed document across the desk. The contract was clear, the font plain. No hidden clauses. Vacation days, sick days, hourly rate, overtime, policy all laid out. "Take this home," he said. "Read it. Have someone else look at it if you want. I am not asking you to sign anything right now." She flipped through the pages, eyes scanning lines, almost hungrily looking for the trap. The words stayed clean. "This is fair," she said, surprised at how strange it felt to say it. "It is meant to be," he answered. "Why not just hire from an agency?" she asked. "You said you have done that before." "I could," he said. "I might still if you decide this is not for you. But I would rather work with someone who already has a stake in keeping my kid from turning into a goose wrangler." She gave a small huff of amusement. "I will think about it," she said. "Good," he replied. "That is all I asked." She took the contract, feeling its weight in her bag on the bus ride home, heavier than paper should be. That night, after Zoe fell asleep, Harper sat at the small table in their kitchen corner and read every line twice. Lip between her teeth, she underlined a few phrases with a pen, circling the parts about notice and hours. There was no mention of dinners, no vague phrases about extra appreciation, just work and pay and boundaries. She signed on the last page, her name careful and small, and slid the contract back into the envelope. A week later, she sat at a desk near the front window of Cruz & Partners with a login for the email system and a passcode for the copier. Karen showed her the filing system, the coffee maker, the way the phones could be transferred. Harper listened, asked concise questions, wrote neat notes in a small notebook she kept in her pocket. Her first day was a blur of information and small tests. Daniel hovered less than she expected. He checked in, gave her a list of tasks, then retreated to his office for a call. When she made a mistake sending a draft proposal to the wrong address, he did not make a speech. He stepped out, leaned against the edge of her desk, and said, "Next time, double-check the client name before you hit send." "Yes," she said, throat tight. "That is it," he said. "Nobody died." He walked away. The world did not collapse. Karen gave her a piece of gum and told her about the time she had erased an entire client file by accident. Days slid into weeks. The routine of the office settled around Harper like a new kind of skin. She arrived at 8:30 every morning, coat zipped up against the cold fingers, stiff until they wrapped around the warm ceramic of the first coffee. She watched the inbox, sorted messages, flagged the ones that needed Daniel's immediate eyes. She learned the names of clients by the way they typed. The hurried ones who sent 4 short emails instead of 1 long one. The careful ones with bullet points and full sentences. The lonely ones who added unnecessary details about their day. She adjusted Daniel's schedule, move meetings when emergencies came up, made sure he had enough time between appointments to breathe and refill his mug. At first, every time her phone buzzed with his extension, a jolt of anxiety shot through her. She braced for a criticism that reached beyond the walls. It never came. "Can you move my 2 o'clock to tomorrow?" he would ask. "Client is stuck at the airport." "Sure," she would say. "Can you remind me of the name of the woman from the bakery we consulted with last month?" he might say. "Elena," she would answer. "She sent cookies, which is why you remember her." He treated her like part of the machine that kept the firm running, no more and no less. When she did well, he said, "Good catch," or "Nice save," and moved on. When she stumbled, he pointed it out once and expected her to adjust. The 3-month probation period ticked forward. Outside, snow threatened and sometimes landed, turning the city briefly white, before cars and footsteps grounded into gray slush. Inside, the office stayed warm. Harper hung her coat on the same hook every morning. She kept a spare pair of shoes under her desk. She did not talk much about her life outside work. Neither did Daniel. Their conversations stayed anchored in calendars and clients. Still, small details slipped through. Once, when a client canceled at the last minute, leaving a gap, he ran a hand over his face and said, "I was counting on that one." She said, "We have had 3 new inquiries this week. That is not nothing." He looked at her surprised, then nodded. "Thank you," he said. Another time she arrived 5 minutes past her usual time, hair damp from snow. Karen was making tea. Daniel appeared in the doorway of his office. "Everything all right?" he asked. "Bus slid," she said, "on a patch of ice. No one was hurt, just slow." "Good," he said. "You are here now?" He did not mention the 5 minutes again. By the end of the 2nd month, she no longer flinched when he walked up behind her desk. By the end of the 3rd, she no longer checked her phone every hour to make sure Zoe's school had not called without her noticing. The contract end date for the probation was a Tuesday. Harper knew exactly which day it was, had circled it in her notebook, but she pretended not to watch the calendar. That morning, Daniel came out of his office with a folder in his hand. "Harper," he said, "do you have a minute?" She closed the tab she had been working in and followed him, palms suddenly damp. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. The photograph of Sunrise Diner watched them from its corner. "You have been here just under 3 months," he said. "Officially, this is the part where I decide if you are worth keeping." Her spine straightened. "I am not interested in starting over somewhere else," she said before she could stop herself. "If that is what you are about to suggest." He shook his head. "I would be an idiot to let you go," he said. "You are the best thing that has happened to this office since Karen figured out how to fix the copier." Karen snorted from her desk outside, somehow hearing them through the door. He slid a new document across the desk. This one was thinner, a simple confirmation. "If you are still willing," he said, "I would like to make your position permanent. Benefits raise the whole boring package." She read quickly. The terms matched what he was saying. Health insurance options paid time off, a slight bump in hourly rate. "This is still fair," she said. "I am trying to make it boringly fair," he replied. "The kind of fair that does not need to be talked about often." She signed. Her handwriting shook just enough that she noticed. He took the paper, added it to the folder, and filed it in the cabinet beside his desk. "Welcome to the long haul," he said. She allowed herself a small smile. "Do not make me regret it," she said. "I will try not to," he answered. She went back to her desk. The office looked the same, smelled the same, sounded the same. Yet something under her ribs felt different, as if a rope that had been pulled too tight had loosened a notch. That afternoon, when she picked up Zoe from school, the girl bounced on her toes. "How was work?" Zoe asked. "Good," Harper said. "They are keeping me." Zoe grinned. "Good," she said. "Then I can keep seeing Mia." Harper brushed a bit of glitter from her daughter's hair. Some art project had clearly been ambitious. "Yes," she said. "You can keep seeing Mia." They walked home together, hand in hand, snow threatening again in the clouds. The weight of a permanent job settled into place behind the usual worries. It did not erase them. It rearranged them. In the quiet moments at her new desk, between emails and phone calls, a thought began to form at the edges of Harper's mind. It did not yet have shape, only the sense that the ground under her feet was no longer shifting in every direction at once. Winter showed up almost overnight. One week the sidewalks were just cold, the next they were dusted with a thin layer of powder that crunched under boots and turned to gray slush by noon. Breath hung in the air like small ghosts. The office radiators knocked and hissed in protest. Harper adjusted to the new routine without thinking much about it. She left a few minutes earlier in the morning to account for slower buses. She wrapped Zoe in 2 layers of scarves, tugged a knit hat over her ears, and walked her to school, carefully avoiding patches of ice that looked like nothing at all until you stepped on them. Work settled into a steady rhythm. Mondays started with full inboxes and overfull calendars. By Friday afternoon, things thinned out like a wave pulling back. One Thursday, the day slid toward evening faster than usual. The sky darkened, early clouds hanging low and heavy. From the office window, the city lights blinked on in clusters, tiny pockets of gold. Daniel sat at his desk, the last of a mug of coffee, cooling by his elbow. He was reviewing a contract, red pen hovering above a paragraph that refused to make sense. Karen had already gone home. A couple of consultants were still in their offices finishing reports. The phone on his desk rang. The small display showed Harper's extension. He picked up. "Yeah," he said. There was a breath on the line, quick and uneven. "Mr. Cruz," Harper said, "I am sorry, I know it is late." Her voice did not sound like it did in the office. It was thinner, stretched. "What is going on?" he asked. "It is Zoe," she said. "She started coughing last night, and this morning she had a fever. I thought it was just a cold. It got worse. She can hardly catch her breath. I am on the bus to the emergency room. I am calling because tomorrow I know I am supposed to be here. And I just started and I do not have any time off saved and I... Harper, he said. She kept talking, words piling on top of each other. I can ask Karen to cover phones, or I can bring my laptop and answer emails from the waiting room. I just did not want you to think I am taking advantage of the job and... Harper, he said again more firmly. She stopped. For a moment, all he could hear on the line was the shudder of the bus suspension and the choked sound of someone breathing too fast, maybe both of them. Take Zoe to the emergency room, he said. Right now. That is all I want you to do. But the schedule, she said. The clients, the deadlines, the probation is over, but still, I have not even had 1 full month as a permanent employee and... I do not care about the schedule, he said. Not tonight. He swiveled in his chair, reaching for his coat. Which hospital? He asked. Denver General, she said. It is the closest. I will meet you there, he said. You do not have to, she said quickly. You definitely do not have to. I am not going as your boss, he said. I am going as someone who knows what it feels like to sit in an emergency room with a kid who cannot breathe. There was a small hitch in her breath. It might have been a sob she was trying to swallow. I will call Karen and make sure the office is covered, he added. Do not think about work. Think about getting Zoe seen fast. Okay, she said very quietly. He hung up, grabbed his coat, and turned off his office light. As he passed Karen's desk, he left a quick note, then texted her to check messages and reschedule anything urgent for the morning. He barely read her response. The air in the stairwell was cold. He took the steps 2 at a time, pushed through the front door, and made for his car. The drive to Denver General took 15 minutes. It felt longer. Traffic crawled in places where it should have flowed. A light turned red just as he reached it. He watched the clock on his dashboard and tried not to imagine anything beyond the next turn. The hospital's main entrance doors slid open with a soft hiss as he approached. The smell hit him first sharp, and clean disinfectant layered over old coffee and rubber soles. The fluorescent lights inside made everything look a little washed out. The emergency department waiting room was busy. People in coats hunched over their phones. A child cried somewhere behind a curtain. A television on the wall played the news with the sound turned down. He saw Harper in a hard plastic chair near the last row. Zoe lay with her head in her mother's lap, eyes half closed, cheeks flushed an unhealthy red. Her breathing was shallow, each inhale a small effort, each exhale a soft rattle. Harper's hair was pulled back in a quick knot, strands escaping around her face. Her coat was unbuttoned, as if she had forgotten about the cold. One hand rested on Zoe's forehead, the other clutched the edge of the chair so tightly her knuckles were pale. He walked over slowly enough that she saw him coming, not wanting to startle her. When her eyes lifted to his, they were wide and raw. They said a doctor will see her soon, she said before he could speak. They checked her oxygen. It is low, but not the lowest, they said. She has to wait. He looked at Zoe. Her lips had a faint bluish tint at the edges. Hey Zoe, he said softly. It is Daniel, from the park. Her eyes opened a little more. She tried a smile. Hi, she whispered. The word was dry. The word was dry and thin. She has pneumonia, Harper said. They think. They will take a chest x-ray. They started something through an inhaler. They keep saying, we will see, and soon, and I. Her voice shook. She pressed her lips together. Okay, he said. Okay. You are here. She is here. That is the first step. He took the empty chair next to her. The molded plastic was cold through his jeans. For a moment, none of them spoke. The sound of the TV flickering above the front desk filled the space. A nurse appeared at the doorway and called Zoe's name. Harper stood at once, her hand under her daughter's shoulder. I will be right here, Daniel said. He watched them follow the nurse past the swinging doors into the maze of white curtains and beeping machines. The doors swayed closed behind them. He sat back down, then stood up again almost immediately. Sitting felt wrong. He moved to the registration desk. The clerk behind it was in her 40s, her hair pulled into a bun, her expression both tired and kind. Can I help you? She asked. Steiner, a child just came in, he said. Zoe Lane, with her mother Harper. She is one of my employees. The woman typed something into her screen. They are in triage, she said. They will likely admit the child if it is pneumonia. He nodded. The expected answer did not make his chest any less tight. Do they have insurance on file? He asked. The woman hesitated. "I cannot share patient details," she said. "Privacy rules." He understood. Rules were rules. So were bills. "If I want to make sure the hospital gets paid," he said, choosing his words carefully, "how do I do that without interfering with her decisions about treatment or anything else?" The clerk studied him for a moment, then pulled out a form. "You can fill out a guarantor agreement," she said. "That makes you financially responsible for charges. It does not give you access to medical information or decision-making. Those stay with the parent." "Good," he said. "I want it that way." He took the pen she handed him and began to write. Name, address, phone number, social security number, employer. The lines blurred briefly, then came back into focus. He signed at the bottom. The pen left a thin groove in the paper where he pressed a little too hard. The clerk stamped the form, entered a note in the computer, and filed the paper. "All right," she said. "Anything related to payment will come to you." "Thank you," he said. He returned to the waiting area. The chair he had been in was still empty. He took it again and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands folded. Time stretched. Nurses moved in and out of the treatment area. A man in a stained work jacket paced along the far wall. A teenager in a soccer uniform slept with his head on his mother's shoulder. Finally, Harper reappeared through the doors. Zoe did not walk beside her. Instead, a nurse pushed a rolling bed. Zoe lay on it, a small plastic mask over her nose and mouth. Her eyes were open now, but drowsy from medication. Harper's expression looked carved out, as if someone had taken a chisel to her composure. "They are admitting her," she said when she reached him. Her voice sounded like it was coming from far away. "It is pneumonia, her right lung. They are starting IV antibiotics. They want to keep her for at least 2 nights. Her hand trembled on the metal rail of the bed. "They asked about insurance," she said. "I told them I have coverage now through work, but the card just came last week, and I do not know what is covered and what is not, and I have no idea how much this will cost, and—" Her voice broke. "I cannot lose this," she said. "I cannot lose her, and I cannot lose this job, and I cannot lose everything again because I walked into the wrong office." A nurse looked between them, then rolled the bed toward the elevator, giving them space to follow. As they walked, Daniel kept his voice low and steady. "Listen to me," he said. "First thing, you are not going to lose your job. We can survive a few days without you at a desk. We cannot replace you as Zoe's mother." She shook her head as if his words were a wind she did not want to feel. "You say that now," she said, "until the bills show up." "They will show up," he said. "I already arranged for them to come to me." She stopped walking. The elevator doors opened ahead of them. The nurse paused, one hand on the bed rail. "What did you do?" Harper asked. "I signed a guarantor form," he said. "The hospital will send the charges to my address. I will pay them." Her eyes flared. "No," she said. The word came out sharp. "No, you do not get to do that." "Too late," he said. "The ink is dry." "Then unsign it," she said. "Tell them you changed your mind. I did not ask you to do that." "I know you did not," he said. "Do you have any idea how much this will cost?" she said. "It is not a dinner. It is not a bag of groceries. This is thousands, tens of thousands." "Probably," he said. "And you are just going to pay it," she said, "like a parking ticket." "It will hurt," he said, honest. "In the account. It will not break me." "It will break me," she said. "I will owe you more money than I have ever seen. I will never be able to pay you back." "I am not asking you to," he said. The nurse cleared her throat softly. "We need to get her upstairs," she said. "They will want to start the IV soon." Harper looked between the nurse and Daniel, eyes bright with anger and fear. "I do not want to owe anyone anything," she said. "Then do not call it a debt," he said. "Call it me keeping a promise to someone who is not here." She frowned, confused through her panic. "When Mia was little," he said, "she got sick. Not as sick as this. Sick enough that I could not work for a while. Mrs. Patel paid my rent for 3 months, so we would not end up back in the truck." He took a breath. "I tried to pay her back," he said. "She would not take it. She told me the only way I could, even the score, was to help someone else when I could. She did not tell me who or when, just that I would know." He spread his hands slightly. "I am not doing this to own you," he said. "I am doing this because a woman in a diner kitchen refused to let me fall through the floor." Harper's grip on the bed rail loosened by a fraction. Zoe shifted on the mattress, letting out a small sound behind the mask. "If you cannot accept it for yourself," he said quietly, Accept it for her. Let her have doctors and medicine without learning that every kindness carries a hook. Harper looked at her daughter. The IV catheter taped to Zoe's hand looked too big against the small bones. She will grow up, he said. People will disappoint her. That is life. But maybe she does not have to learn tonight that help always comes with a bill stamped on her forehead. Harper closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was still fear in them, but some of the fury had drained away. Fine, she said, for her. Good, he replied. She glanced at him a quick searching look. If you use this to get anything from me, she said, anything I have not already agreed to give as your employee, I walk away. From the job, from the park, from every place you are. That is fair, he said. Hold me to it. She gave a short nod toward the nurse. We can go up now, she said. The nurse pressed the elevator button. The door slid fully open. They went inside the little group, reflected back at them from the brushed metal walls. Zoe on the bed mask, fogging slightly with each breath. Harper by her side. Daniel a step back close enough to be present far enough not to crowd. On the pediatric floor, things were quieter. The walls were painted with cartoon animals. A mobile hung from the ceiling in one doorway, paper fish turning slowly in the air. They settled Zoe into a room with a window that looked out over the parking lot and the dark ribbon of the highway beyond. A nurse adjusted the oxygen, checked the IV, and explained the plan in calm, practiced words. Antibiotics, monitoring, breathing treatments. Harper stood next to the bed, one hand on the rail. She listened, nodding, asking one or two questions that made sense and many that came from fear. When the nurse left the room, felt larger and smaller at once. You should go home, Harper said, not looking at Daniel. Your daughter will be waiting. Mia is with a neighbor tonight, he said. I texted, she is fine. You have a company to run, she said. The company will be there in the morning, he replied. I am not leaving you to sit here alone. I have been alone in worse places, she said. I know, he said. That does not mean you have to be now. Zoe shifted again. Her eyes fluttered open. Mom, she murmured. I am here, Harper said, immediately leaning close. She brushed her hand over Zoe's hair. Zoe's gaze moved to Daniel, half hazy behind the mask. You are at the wrong building, she mumbled. The park is outside. He smiled. I found the indoor version, he said. Okay, she whispered, already drifting off again. Harper pulled the chair from the corner and sat down, her hand never leaving the bed rail. Daniel took the other chair near the window. Night settled outside, the glass turning black. Inside, the machines beeped softly. Nurses came and went, checking charts, adding fluid to bags. Once a doctor stopped in to listen to Zoe's chest and make a note. Daniel left only twice. Once to get coffee, bringing an extra cup back and setting it within Harper's reach. Once to go to the admissions desk on the pediatric floor to confirm that the billing information had been updated. Harper did not drink the coffee at first. It sat cooling beside her until her hand found it almost by accident. The first sip made her wince, then sigh. You do not have to stay, she said again after midnight. He stretched his back, feeling a knot in his shoulders. I remember sitting by Mia's bed, he said. Every hour felt like a full day. The only thing that helped was someone walking in who did not need anything from me. She turned the cup in her hands. You think this is what Mrs. Patel meant? She asked. I think she did not want me to spend my life counting pennies of what she did, he said. So I am not going to let you start counting now. A small sound escaped her, something between a laugh and a sob. You really are stubborn, she said. So I have been told, he replied. Around 3 a.m, Zoe's breathing evened out. The harsh rasp softened to something closer to normal. The color crept back into her cheeks, replacing the sickly flush with a healthier pink. Harper's shoulders dropped a little. Her eyes, rimmed red, stayed on her daughter's face. She looks better, Daniel said softly. She does, Harper agreed. Silence settled over the room, gentler this time. Harper looked toward the window, where the reflection of the three of them hovered faintly in the glass. For the first time in a long time, the image of another person staying unasked did not make her flinch. She turned back to Daniel. Thank you, she said. He nodded. The words were different from the ones at the park. These were not grudging or tangled with suspicion. They were exhausted and real. Get some sleep, he said. I will be here when you wake up. She hesitated, then closed her eyes, her hands still locked around the rail of the bed. Within minutes, her head tilted slightly, and her breathing deepened. Daniel shifted in his chair, found a position his back could tolerate, and watched the slow rise and fall of Zoe's chest. The beep of the monitor became a kind of rough lullaby. Somewhere in the building, doors opened and closed. Nurses laughed softly, a cart rattled along the hall. The hospital moved around them, humming with all the other stories playing out behind other doors and other windows. Inside this small room, however, there was only a sleeping child, an exhausted mother, and a man who had once sat in a different hospital and promised himself that if he ever had enough, no one else would have to count breaths and dollars at the same time. By the time the sun rose fully, the worst of the night had passed. Zoe's fever had broken just before dawn. Beads of sweat had gathered at her hairline. Her skin, which had felt like fire under Harper's hand, cooled to something closer to normal. The harsh rattle in her chest eased into softer breaths. A nurse came in, checked her vitals, smiled at the numbers, and whispered that the antibiotics were doing their job. Harper woke to the sound of that voice and the gentle click of the blood pressure cuff. Her neck ached from sleeping half upright in the chair. Her fingers hurt where they had remained, hooked around the bed rail, even in sleep. She looked at Zoe first, always first. Color had returned to her daughter's face. Not the flushed red of fever, but a healthy pink beneath her freckles. Her breathing was still a little fast, but no longer sounded like someone trying to pull air through a straw. Harper exhaled a breath she felt she had been holding for years. Across the room near the window, Daniel stirred in his own chair. His head had tipped back at some point, chin up, mouth slightly open. A line of light from the blinds cut across his jaw. When he shifted his back, made a faint cracking sound. He winced, straightened a little, and blinked. "She looks better," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "She does," Harper replied. The nurse finished her checks, left a note on the chart, and promised to return with breakfast. The door closed with a soft click. For a moment, the room held a quiet that did not feel like waiting. It felt like landing. Harper brushed a strand of hair away from Zoe's forehead. The girl's eyes fluttered open. "Hey, you," Harper whispered. "Hey," Zoe mumbled. Her voice was weak but clear. "You scared me," Harper said. Zoe's eyes slid toward Daniel. "Hi," she said. "Morning," he answered. "You gave the nurses a workout." "I do not remember," she said. "That is because you were busy fighting dragons in your sleep," he replied. Zoe closed her eyes again, a hint of a smile at the edges. Later that morning, a pediatrician in bright sneakers came in, listened to Zoe's lungs, and declared that they were moving in the right direction. Zoe would need to stay another day for monitoring, but the phrase "going home" left the doctor's mouth like a small, clean promise. Harper's shoulders dropped another inch. When 2 paper trays of hospital breakfast arrived, Harper stared at them as if they might vanish. Scrambled eggs in a plastic dish toast that cooled too fast, orange juice in a covered cup. She coaxed Zoe into eating a few bites. The girl wrinkled her nose but complied. Daniel accepted a cup of bitter coffee from a passing cart more out of habit than desire. The caffeine hit his system and made his thoughts sharper. "Once they move you to a regular room, I will run home and grab you some things," he said. "Clothes, toothbrush, anything you need." "You do not have to," Harper said automatically. "I know," he said. "I want to." She looked like she might argue, then glanced at Zoe and let it go. "Thank you," she said instead. The word had shifted again. Less reluctant, more simple. He drove home, showered, changed his shirt, checked on Mia. She was full of questions. "Is Zoe okay?" Mia asked, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal. "She is better," he said. "She will need a few days in the hospital." "Can we visit?" Mia said. "Not yet," he replied. "Maybe later. For now, her mom needs it quiet." Mia nodded, serious. "Tell her I said hi," she said, "and that I know hospital food is gross, but she has to eat it anyway." "I will deliver the message," he said. He packed a small bag with things Harper might need. A sweatshirt, sweatpants, socks, extras he kept at the office for emergencies. He added a notebook and a pen, then hesitated, pulled the notebook back out. She does not need a reminder of work here, he thought, and left it on his desk. Back at the hospital, the day blurred into tasks, forms to sign, vitals to check. Harper dozed in short bursts, her body insisting on rest now that it had been given permission. That night, Daniel went home. He made sure Harper had numbers for the nurses, that she understood the plan, and that someone would always be within shouting distance if she needed anything. "I will be back in the morning," he said. "You have already done too much," she replied. He shook his head. "I have done what I said I would do," he answered. "Nothing more." Zoe returned home 2 days later. She wore an oversized sweatshirt and hospital socks in her shoes. The brisk air hit her cheeks as they stepped outside, and she took a deep breath, only wincing a little at the pull in her chest. Harper carried the discharge papers in a folder under her arm. Inside, a map of medications, follow-up appointments, warning signs to watch for. When they reached their apartment building, Zoe tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Can Mia come over when I am not sick anymore?" she asked. "If her dad says yes," Harper replied, "and if you finish all your medicine without complaining." "I do not complain," Zoe said. "You complain in very small voices," Harper said. A week after the hospital, Harper walked back into the office. She expected the same knot in her stomach she had carried after past crises, the fear of what she would find, of whispers of doors closed, of opportunities pulled away while she had been away. Instead, she found a stack of sticky notes on her desk in Karen's familiar handwriting, breaking down what had happened in her absence. Which calls had come in, which clients had been rescheduled, which messages needed her attention now, and which ones had already been handled. "Welcome back," one of the notes read. There was a small smiley face drawn in the corner. Daniel appeared in the doorway a few minutes after she hung up her coat. "Good to see you," he said. "How is she?" "Still tired," Harper said, "but better. The antibiotics are doing what they are supposed to do." "Good," he said. "We have lived to fight email another day." He did not ask her to stay late to make up hours. He did not remind her how much time she had been gone. He did not mention the hospital bill. If he thought about the numbers that would arrive in his mailbox, he kept it to himself. Harper fell back into the flow of the office. Yet something in her approach had changed. Before, she had moved through her tasks with the careful precision of someone expecting the floor to drop away at any moment. Now that precision remained, but there was a different energy under it, less like bracing for an impact and more like steering. She began to make suggestions. "That client in Boulder always reschedules their morning calls," she told Daniel one afternoon. "If we move them permanently to the afternoon, the calendar will stop looking like a mess every Tuesday." "You are right," he said. "Do it." Another time, she noticed a pattern in the late payments from a particular account. She pointed it out, drafted a polite but firm email, and had Daniel approve it. "I do not like writing those," he admitted. "You should not have to," she said. "That is part of my job." He found himself relying on her judgment more often. When a new potential client called, he glanced at her over the top of his monitor. "What do you think?" he asked after the call, laying out the details. "They sound disorganized," she said. "They might pay well, but they might also drain more time than they are worth." He considered this, then nodded. "Then we pass," he said. On Fridays, sometimes Karen would bring in a box of donuts, or someone would suggest ordering takeout for lunch. The first few times, Harper declined eating the food she had brought from home at her desk. Gradually, she accepted a slice of pizza, half a donut, a shared carton of fries. She joined the table in the small break area, listening more than talking at first. She learned that one consultant collected old maps, another ran marathons. Karen had 2 grown sons and a very spoiled cat. In return, she let slip that Zoe liked to draw dragons on everything, and that she could sew up a torn hem in less than 5 minutes. Small things, safe things. About 2 months after Zoe came home from the hospital, Harper knocked on Daniel's office door. "Got a minute?" she asked. He glanced at the screen, at the unfinished email, at the half-written note on his pad. He capped his pen. "Yeah," he said. "Come in." She stepped inside, closed the door with a soft click, and sat down. She did not have a notepad with her, no folder. That alone made him pay attention. "This is not about work," she said. "Okay," he replied. "Yes," he replied. "What is on your mind?" She took a breath, then let it out through her nose. "There is a woman at Zoe's school," she said. "Third floor end of the hall. Her daughter is in Zoe's class." A picture formed as she spoke. A woman in the school hallway, hand-me-down coat, tired eyes. "I have seen her counting change in the cafeteria line," Harper said. "More than once. Her girl wears shoes that are too small. I know that look on a parent's face when they are trying to stretch $1 into 3. Daniel nodded. The description slipped over a memory of himself and Mia, and over the picture of Harper at Harbor Grill. "I want to help her," Harper said. The words came out flat at first, then gathered weight. "But I do not want to be Victor," she added. "I do not want to become another person who makes help a leash. I keep thinking about what you did at the hospital, and how it felt, and how it did not feel, and I am still trying to untangle it." He stayed quiet, listening. "I have been putting a little aside," she said. "Since I started here, not much. Enough that, for the first time in a long time, I am not counting every penny twice." Her fingers twisted together once, then stilled. I keep thinking about that woman, she said, about her kids' shoes, and about Mrs. Patel, even though I have never met her. A small smile touched his mouth at the mention. I want to do something, Harper said, for them, but I am afraid. Not of losing the money, of doing it wrong, of making her feel the way I felt when Victor dangled help in front of me with a string tied to it. Daniel leaned back in his chair. You start small, he said. You start specific. She tilted her head. What does that mean? She asked. It means you choose one thing, he said. Not a blank check, not a vague promise. One concrete thing that solves an immediate problem without creating a long-term contract. He thought of Mrs. Patel pushing a plate toward him without a speech. You could buy the girl a pair of shoes and leave them where the mother will find them, he said, with a note that does not demand thanks. No name if that feels easier. Something like, from someone who understands. Harper pictured it, the small box, the note. Anonymous, she said. Maybe at first, he replied. Or you could invite them to join you and Zoe at the park, not as a rescue mission, just as company. Pay for ice cream without making a ceremony of it. She listened, absorbing the ideas, turning them over. And if she says no, Harper said, then you accept it, he said. You do not press. You let her keep her pace. You become a consistent presence, not a storm. Harper sat with that for a moment. It is harder than it looks, she said, helping someone. You know more about the wrong kind of help than most, he said. That makes you better equipped to avoid it. Her gaze flicked to the photograph on his desk. Mrs. Patel's hand rested on the shoulder of a younger Daniel, both of them standing in the sunlight outside Sunrise Diner. I have been volunteering at a community kitchen on Saturdays, she said. The one on 15th. They serve free dinners. He raised his brows, surprised. You have, he said. Zoe and I go, Harper said. We slice bread. We wash dishes. Sometimes we just wipe tables. It felt like a way to balance things in my own head. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, slid it across the desk. This is for them, she said. For the kitchen. It is not much. 500. He blinked. Harper, he said. That is not nothing. It is in your name, she said, and in Mrs. Patel's. I asked them to write it that way. He looked at the envelope but did not open it. The thickness of the paper told him enough. You did not have to, he said quietly. I know, she said. That is why I can. Their eyes held for a moment. This is not paying you back, she added, for the hospital. I know, he said. This is me paying attention, she said, to what it felt like when someone helped and did not ask for anything in return. He swallowed against the sudden tightness in his throat. You have come a long way from the woman who wanted to throw my business card in the trash, he said. I still wanted to, she replied. I just did not. She stood. I should get back to my desk, she said. Karen starts tapping her watch if I stay in here too long. She taps at me too, he said. You are in good company. At the door, Harper hesitated, then turned back. There is one more thing, she said. What is that? He asked. Zoe wants to invite Mia over, she said, for a proper play date, now that we are not worried about her coughing a lung out on the carpet. He smiled. I am sure Mia will be delighted, he said. She has opinions about your goose drawing skills she would like to share in person. You are all obsessed with those birds, Harper said. We have to respect the local wildlife, he replied. She shook her head, but there was amusement in it now. I will text you, she said, about the time. I will look forward to it, he said. When she closed the door, he picked up the envelope again and opened it. The check inside was crisp, the ink still dark. $500. Signed in a hand he now recognized from contract forms and sticky notes. He thought of what that amount represented in Harper's life. Not spare change, not a token, a sacrifice deliberately made. He set the check back in the envelope and placed it beside the photograph of Sunrise Diner. The image of Mrs. Patel looked out from the framed sunlight on her face. Looks like your investment is still paying out, he murmured. He imagined Harper at the community kitchen, sleeves rolled up, Zoe at her side, passing plates along. He imagined another woman at another school hallway, finding a pair of new shoes for her child with a note that did not demand anything in return. The thought settled over him with a strange, quiet warmth. Not pride, something gentler, as if a long echo had reached the end of a long hallway and found a place to rest. The first warm day of spring slid into the city almost shyly. Snowmelt ran in narrow streams along the gutters. Patches of grass emerged from under the old ice, flattened but alive. People left their heavy coats unbuttoned. Children on scooters zigzagged along sidewalks, testing speed they had not dared all winter. On a Saturday morning, Daniel and Mia climbed the narrow stairs of a brick apartment building on the east side. The hallway smelled faintly of someone's cooking and the citrus cleaner the landlord favored. The walls were painted off white, scuffed at child height. Mia carried a tote bag stuffed with colored pencils, a sketchbook, and a small board game. She bounced on each step despite Daniel's reminder not to. "Remember," she said, "we are not allowed to bring bread to lure geese to the balcony." "I do not think there are geese on the third floor," Daniel said. "There might be," she replied. "Urban geese are creative." He shook his head, but the corner of his mouth twitched. At the end of the hall, a door stood slightly open. Light leaked out through the gap. Voices spilled into the hallway. Zoe's laugh was unmistakable. Harper pulled the door wider as they approached. "You found it," she said. "There was only one door with dragon stickers at kid height," Daniel said. On the lower half of the door, someone had carefully arranged stickers of dragons, stars, and something that looked suspiciously like a goose with wings too big for its body. "Zoe's work," Harper said. "I have learned to choose my battles." "Nice place," Daniel said. "You have not seen it yet," she replied. Inside the apartment was small but bright. A couch with a faded throw blanket, a low table covered in crayons and paper shelves that looked like they had been assembled slowly from thrift stores and curbside finds. The window in the living room was wide, letting in a wash of light that warmed the worn rug. A vase of cheap grocery store flowers sat in the center of the table. Their colors were almost too bright for the room. "It is not much," Harper said, "but it is ours." She said the word ours with a softness that made it sound larger. "You passed the credit check?" Daniel said. "With terrifying flying colors," she replied. "First time anyone has looked at my paperwork and not flinched." Zoe appeared from the hallway sock sliding on the floor hair in two crooked braids. "Mia," she said, almost shouting the name. Mia set the tote bag down just in time before Zoe barreled into her. They hugged with the full force of 6- and 8-year-old enthusiasm. "You have to see my room," Zoe said, "and my dragon drawing." "I brought my colors," Mia said. "We can make a dragon goose army." Harper groaned softly. "They are still on the geese," she said. "Some obsessions are just permanent," Daniel replied. "Chibo, absurd." The girls vanished down the hall, voices overlapping. Harper gestured toward the kitchen corner. "Coffee?" she asked. "Always," he said. The kitchen was tucked into one side of the living room. A small table with two mismatched chairs stood against the wall. A window above the sink looked out onto the neighboring building and a slice of sky. Harper filled the kettle and set it on the stove. The click of the burner turning on sounded louder in the small space. She moved with a familiarity that made it clear she had already had many mornings here, making toast and packing lunches. On the fridge held by magnets shaped like fruit hung a few pieces of paper. One was a notice from school. The others were drawn in marker and crayon. Dragons mostly, and one surprisingly accurate goose. Daniel leaned closer to look at that one. "You have been practicing?" he called toward the hallway. A voice floated back. "I know what they look like now." Harper pulled 2 mugs from the cabinet. "I have been meaning to talk to you," she said over the sound of water starting to simmer. "That usually means something complicated is coming," he said. "This is less complicated than the hospital," she said. "More complicated than a calendar adjustment." He waited. She turned, leaned against the counter, and folded her arms for a moment, then unfolded them. "I have been thinking about the bill," she said. He did not need her to specify which one. "I told you," he began. "I know what you told me," she said. "I heard you. I believe you. This is not about paying you back." The kettle whistled. She turned to pour steam rising between them for a moment. She slid a mug toward him, then wrapped her hands around her own. "I started volunteering at the kitchen before Zoe got sick," she said. "After the hospital, after coming back here, after reading that discharge total, and not having my stomach drop through the floor, I thought about that number a lot." He took a cautious sip. The coffee was strong, slightly bitter. "It made me angry at first," she said. "Not at you. At the fact that one piece of paper stamped with a total could still have that much power over how I feel." He nodded. Receipts had haunted him for years, too. "So I decided that if it was going to have that much power," she said, "I wanted to move some of it around, on purpose." She glanced toward the hallway, then back at him. "The check for the community kitchen," she said. "I want you to know that writing it did not feel like losing something. It felt like putting weight down somewhere it could be useful." He set his mug on the counter. I am glad, he said. Zoe and I go every Saturday now, she said. She likes stacking the trays. I like seeing people come in from the cold and sit down without having to prove they deserve to be there. Her eyes went to the window for a moment, to the rectangle of light framing the other building. Feels a little like that first plate you talked about at sunrise, she said. It does, he agreed. She looked back at him. I cannot change what Victor did, she said, or the way my brain still tries to look for fine print in every good thing. But I can decide what kind of fine print I write when I am the one holding the pen. He smiled, slow and genuine. I would trust you with the pen over most people I meet in boardrooms, he said. From the hallway came a crash, followed by laughter. Nothing is broken, Zoe called. On purpose. Harper closed her eyes briefly. They are fine, Daniel said. Probably testing gravity. They like to make sure it still works, she said. Later, they all gathered at the small table. Harper boiled pasta and heated sauce in a dented pan, stirring with ease. Daniel grated cheese while the girls argued about whether dragons preferred spaghetti or lasagna. It is not fancy, Harper said as she set the pot in the center of the table. But there is plenty. It smells better than a lot of places that think they are fancy, Daniel said. They ate shoulders almost touching in the tight space. The window beside them caught the late afternoon light, turning the edges of their faces soft. Mia told a story about a science experiment that had gone wrong at school. Zoe described a dragon picture she planned to draw on the ceiling if her mother ever turned her back long enough. Harper threatened to make them clean the ceiling if they tried it. For a while, the conversation had no weight beyond the small world of school and art and imaginary creatures. That in itself felt like a large thing. After dinner, the girls set up the board game on the living room rug. The colors of the pieces were bright against the worn pattern. Their laughter rolled out in waves, carrying no hint of hospital corridors or restaurant doors. Harper stood by the window looking out at the bit of street visible below. Her reflection hovered faintly on the glass. Daniel joined her. You remember the first time you saw us? She said. At Harbor Grill, he said. You looked like you were ready to throw a punch at anyone who stepped too close. I was, she said. I almost deserved one, he replied. She turned her head slightly. You were clumsy, she said, but you were not him. He is still in your head, he said. Less loudly, she answered. The noise has to share space now. His eyes went to the girls on the floor. Zoe leaned into Mia's shoulder, both of them arguing over a rule that did not exist in the instruction manual. They are good for that, he said. They are, Harper agreed. He checked his watch. We should head out soon, he said. If I want Mia to be a functioning human tomorrow. Give me 5 minutes, Harper said. Zoe owes you something. She disappeared into the hallway and returned with a small envelope, the kind that came in packs of 50 at discount stores. She handed it to Daniel. This is for you, she said, and for Mia. He opened it. Inside was a drawing. 2 girls on swings legs, stretched hair flying back. On the ground below, 2 adults sat on a bench. One had a coffee cup. The other had what might have been a stack of papers. Around them, a scattering of geese with tiny crowns on their heads. Zoe's idea, Harper said. She calls it the Goose Kings and their humans. It is perfect, he said. You can put it next to your diner photo, she said. I will, he replied. At the door, as they put on their coats, Zoe hugged Mia as if they would not see each other again for a year, even though it would be only a few days. Do not forget the game rules, Zoe said. I wrote them down, Mia answered, patting her pocket. I will enforce them at the park. Harper opened the door. The hallway lights flickered once, then steadied. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for inviting us, Daniel said. He stepped out, then paused, one hand on the doorframe. The rectangle of the doorway framed Harper and Zoe. Behind her, the dragon stickers at the bottom. You know, he said, if Mrs. Patel could see this, she would say she was not surprised. She sounds like someone who is rarely surprised, Harper said. Only when people choose not to try, he replied. She smiled. It reached all the way to the lines near her eyes. Tell her in your head that I am working on it, she said. I will, he answered. The door closed with a soft click. No slam. No echo of leaving. Just the simple sound of a home sealing in the warmth. On the walk down the stairs, Mia slipped her hand into his. Dad, she said, I like their place. Me too, he said. It feels like when we first got our house, she said, before we had pictures on the walls. He looked at her. You remember that? He asked. I remember you standing in the living room looking at the windows, she said, like they were magic. They were, he said. Outside, the air was cool but gentle. The sky over the buildings held the last light of day, streaked with pink and orange. They walked toward the bus stop, their steps falling into an easy rhythm. At home that night, after Mia was asleep, Daniel went into his small office. He placed the drawing of the swings and the crowned geese on the shelf beside the photograph of Sunrise Diner. 2 images, 2 doors, 2 sets of people standing just inside the thresholds. He sat for a moment, elbows on his knees, looking at both. The past and the present lined up in a way that felt almost visible. One diner owner in a sari with her hand on the shoulder of a younger man. 2 mothers and 2 daughters in a city several states away, their lives crossing, because someone once opened a door and meant it. He turned off the light. In the dark, the rectangles of the windows in his house glowed faintly with the reflection of the street outside. Somewhere in another part of the city, another set of windows shone in Harper and Zoe's apartment. Between them, the space did not feel so wide. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below.